Hello, it's November. We're giving thanks and we're also recapping an amazing November Basho. So throw!
Throw the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome to the Dohyo here on Mr. JWags channel. We are back and we are recapping an amazing November Basho. But before we do, we have a few Sumo shoutouts. First shoutout, those of you who have watched the show for a bit may have noticed that I tend to depend on one specific website for all of my Sumo stats. Sumo Reference, shouted them out many times. But for those of you who have also gone to Sumo Reference and used it regularly, you may have noticed that every now and again, they just go dark for a little bit, and I get that. It's a site that has to update every now and again, so of course you're going to get points where the server isn't exactly online. So fortunately, the Sumo gods have answered us with a whole new website called sumostats.com. Do check it out. I am still sort of getting into the swing of this new website, but it does look very cool. It's a very different feel than Sumo Reference, so if you are interested in Sumo Stats, do check out Sumo Stats. Second shout out, some of you may have noticed I am not wearing my normal trademark Old Navy black crew tee. I'm in fact wearing this gorgeous mustard-colored bespoke silk-screened shirt celebrating one of our favorite wrestlers here on the channel, Tobizaru. Check this out, a bespoke Tobizaru shirt. So I want to give a shout out to the amazing silk screener who made this, who happens to be a fan of the show. So if you need something silk screened, go to Instagram, check out @AbuFabi and look for the username Sam Shabadoo. And they did this. I'm sure they'd be very happy to help you with any custom silk screening needs. Shout out. And we have some sad news for this recap. 52nd Yokozuna Kitanofuji has passed away. Of course, Kitanofuji, not only a Yokozuna who won 10 championships, but also an Oyakata and a very famous announcer for NHK. For those of you who want to know a little bit more about Kitanofuji, we covered a lot of his career in our Tamano Umi episode, as the two of them were best friends and friendly rivals during their career. So if you're interested, do check it out. All right, let's get to talking about this November Basho, and since you all have asked for it,
JWags was wrong.
yes, I misread this Basho. I thought we were entering into a Basho where we were going to have a weak Ozeki crop, and I was very, very wrong about that. Of course, the big story is Ozeki Kotozakura wins his very first Yusho. This was such an amazing tournament for Kotozakura. I've been a little worried. Since January, when he got a 13-2 playoff loss to Terunofuji, he's sort of been at average for what we consider an Ozeki should sort of be bringing to the table. He got a 14-1, his best record ever in Makuuchi. This was the very first time since he has made Sekitori status and has been wrestling 15 full days in a tournament that he has won his last 5 matches. This tells me that Kotozakura, now at the ripe old age of 27, may finally be getting a grasp on how to beat these top Sanyaku members. Now, the two things that I really noticed about Kotozakura in this tournament is that his knees looked way healthier than they have in the past. Sometimes Kotozakura looks a little stiff, a little Frankenstein-y, but he was getting some good, deep squats, and most of these matches were not particularly close. And just on a personal level, it's just really nice to see all of our Ozeki now having a Yusho. It feels good that we're not going to have Kotozakura fall into sort of that Takeyasu hole. Our June Yusho went to Ozeki Hoshoryu, which was also amazing because this was also the best tournament I have ever seen Hoshoryu wrestle. I am now learning that shooting an episode the night before Thanksgiving while living like a mile from LaGuardia Airport may be slightly counterproductive in terms of audio. Now, in sort of an opposite from Kotozakura, the thing I noticed about Hoshoryu is that he was winning his early matches. The biggest problem Hoshoryu seems to have is that he always ends up dropping 2 to 3 matches to Maegashira in the first week. Matches he should, as an Ozeki, be winning. With this tournament, if we look through the Torikumi, we can see that he's actually beating a lot of these Maegashira he has had trouble with in the past. Maegashira like Oho, Wakataka Kage, Atami Fuji, Kota Shoho, all wrestlers that Hoshoryu has a losing record against. This tournament, he beat every Maegashira in front of him, except Abi. Quick sidebar. Okay, there were a lot of digital pixels spilled and a lot of rending of garments about the Hoshoryu Abi match. And I mentioned it in the quick strike. I normally don't talk about like sort of Gyoji mishaps unless it affects the like the overall Yusho picture. But I will say, yes, Abi absolutely jumped up early and started that match early. The Gyoji should have called a mata. No, I don't think it has anything to do with any sort of bias because Hoshoryu is Mongolian or anything like that. And also, I don't believe that if the match had started fairly, that Hoshoryu was like a 100% definitely gonna win. Abi and Hoshoryu may not be like at 50-50, but it's definitely not one or the other 100%. This one definitely could have gone down to the wire in the ring with a fair start. And ultimately, Hoshoryu went up against the other best wrestler in the tournament on day 15 and had a chance to win it and didn't. So yes, there was a Gyoji mistake, but ultimately I think the sumo gods evened things out and gave Hoshoryu a chance to win, which he did not take advantage of. Quick sidebar. My favorite thing about this tournament was that this is the best I have seen both Kotozakura and Hoshoryu wrestle. Even if we look back to Hoshoryu's Yusho, you'll see he lost to 2 Maegashira in that tournament, and also Kotozakura, who is the other person he lost to in this tournament. And for those of you who are wondering who the next Yokozuna might be, yes, this puts both Kotozakura and Hoshoryu on a Yokozuna run. As longtime viewers know from our What is a Yokozuna Run Really episode, 13-2 does count in a lot of cases as a Yusho equivalent, and Hoshoryu already has one Yusho in the bag. I'd say if Kotozakura wins any sort of Yusho in the next tournament or gets a 12-3 Jun Yusho or higher, excellent chance that he will make Yokozuna. Hoshoryu is a little different because he ended up getting the Jun Yusho, but 13-2 is a very strong start to a Yokozuna run. So if he ends up getting a 13-2 Jun Yusho or a 13-2 Yusho in the next tournament, I'd say that's almost guaranteed for Hoshoryu to make Yokozuna. And yes, double Yokozuna promotion, absolutely a thing. The 2 most recent times it has happened was Taiho and Kashiwado and, as we just mentioned, Kitanofuji and Tamano Umi. So of course, Sekiwake Kirishima, my Yusho pick, did not quite do as well as hoped. In fact, broke the record for the worst start by the Dohyo official Yusho pick with an 0-5, breaking his own record from this past March where he started 0-4. But you have to admit, if we look at the second week, he did so much better. 6-9 is going to knock him out of the Sanyaku, though I expect him to be like Maegashira 1-2 next tournament. Komusubi Shodai got a 4-11. Yeah, I was expecting someone in the Sanyaku to not do too well, and I was expecting it to be Shodai. It happened. He's going to take a deep dive down the Banzuke. And our other Sekiwake Daisho, 8-7. Gonna hold serve, stay there for the next tournament. And while yes, Daisho does have like 2 Kachi Koshi in a row, I don't really see this turning into an Ozeki run short of like a Zen show in January, which is not gonna happen. And now it's time for Uncle Sumo's Attaboys. Uncle Sumo's Attaboys is a recurring segment where we look at the Banzuke and we find wrestlers who weren't necessarily celebrated in the papers with all the ribbons and the bows, but did an amazing job and deserve a little extra attaboy. First up, Komusubi Wakamoto Haru with a 10-5. Now, Wakamoto Haru has not had the greatest year. He'd been up in the Sanyaku for a while, then got injured, dropped down in the Maegashira ranks. He looks amazing. He is back up with a 10-5, looking strong. He will, in fact, be up at Sekiwake next tournament. Now, as opposed to Daisho, Wakamoto Haru's Ozeki status is a little more interesting. He's got 21 wins over the past 2 tournaments. So, a 12-3 in January might do it, but it's a little more than I would normally expect out of Wakamoto Haru, but heck, he got 10 in this tournament and 11 in the tournament before. Go on with your bad self, Wakamoto Haru. And the youngest Onami brother, Maegashira 2 Wakataka Kage, ended up getting a 10-5 in the Joy and his 5th Ginosho Technique Prize. Now, I think a lot of us may have forgotten, but Wakataka Kage started this year in Makushita and has been slowly working his way back up into the Joy with a beautifully consistent sumo. Next attaboy, Maegashira 3 Abi, ended with an 11-4, and even if you take out the Hoshoryu win, that's still 10 wins for Abi up in the Joy. Abi usually tends to live between 6 and 9 wins when he's up at the top of the Banzuke. This is 11 with no Fusen wins, so this tells me Abi is looking better than I have seen him look in a while. And I am almost positive that Wakataka Kage and Abi will be our next Komusubi in January. Next up, Maegashira 6 Takanosho. He got an 11-4 and his 4th Kanto Sho Fighting Spirit Prize. Now, Takanosho has had a fascinating year. He's had 3 tournaments where he's had 10-plus wins, and he's had 2 tournaments of 10-plus losses. So this tells me he's had some great individual tournaments. He's owning that mid-Maegashira stuff, but it shows me he's not quite up at Joy level for his true talent level. Maegashira 8, Gonoyama, an 11-4, and in fact, this is his first Kachikoshi since March. He looked great. The pushing and thrusting seemed strong. I have been waiting for Gonoyama to take a bit of an extra jump. He's still young enough where I think there is room to grow in his sumo. Attaboy. Maegashira 14, Chiyoshoma. This has been a rough year for Chiyoshoma, sort of jumping up and down between Makuuchi and Juryo, but he's back up in Makuuchi and had an 11-4, which means he's going to be up here for a little bit longer. Attaboy, Chiyoshoma. Maegashira 11, Tamawashi. He turned 40 and got a winning record in the top division of professional sumo. He's going to get one every single time he gets a winning record. Tamawashi, 40, attaboy, do it. And the last man on the Juryo Banzuke, Juryo 14 West Osho Umi, started this tournament with 9 straight wins in the Juryo Yusho lead and then got hurt. But then, after going Kyujo, ended up coming back and winning his 10th win. Way to come back, way to stay strong. Attaboy, Osho Umi. And now it's time for our recurring segment, Worried, where we look at a few wrestlers who did not meet expectations in this tournament and whether or not we are worried about their future prospects. First up, I am not worried about Ozeki Onosato and Maegashira 16 Takerufuji. Alright, now both of these guys got winning records. Onosato got a 9-6, and Takerufuji got a 10-5. But clearly, y'all were expecting a lot more, judging from the reactions I have seen on the internet. Now, most of you thought that Ozeki Onosato was going to walk away with this Yusho pretty easily. Ended up not being the case. If you look at sumo history, people don't usually win Yusho in their Ozeki debut. There's a bit of an Ozeki hangover, both figurative and literal. And with Takerufuji, yes, he got a 13-2 Yusho his first 2 times through Juryo and in his Makuuchi debut. But that does not mean that talent level is going to be static for that period of time. So Takerufuji has worked his way back up, but first of all, he's no longer a surprise. He's a guy who's won 2 Juryo Yushos and a Makuuchi Yusho in the past year. Second of all, Takerufuji has just wrestled a lot more matches in the top 2 divisions now, so some people have started to get a book on him and have figured out his strengths. And last of all, let us not forget, he suffered a very serious ankle injury, and that ankle may not be 100% despite his excellent work up to this point. So yes, I am fully expecting amazing things from both Onosato and Takerufuji in the next year. Not worried. Next up, Maegashira 1 Oho. Only got a 6 and 9. And again, I was expecting him to do not so well in this tournament. Oho's career to this point has seemed to have been, he's young, he's got a great body, but it just takes him a little bit of time to work his way up the ranks and really feel comfortable with each sort of level of competition in sumo. So yes, he's only 24. He was coming off a broken bone injury in his eye, I believe, an orbital bone. So let's not be too worried about this young man, and I think he will make the Sanyaku in 2025. I am worried about the other Maegashira one, Hiroto Umi. Yeah, he got a 4-11 in this tournament, and I was not expecting him to do super well, but I was not expecting double-digit losses. Perhaps we have just reached that point in Hiroto Umi's career where he has been slowly working his way up the Banzuke, and now that he's been stuck in sort of the same place for a while, people have just sort of figured out what Hiroto Umi's strengths are. He has a lot of physical limitations. He has short arms, he has a smaller body, he has less mass. So his main thing seems to be, let me close the distance at the tachiai as fast as possible and get a grip and never let go. Well, once you get to the top ranks, you get a lot of guys who are very tall and very massive. So perhaps we are just at the point where we've started to figure out Hiroto Umi. I do expect Hiroto Umi to have a long career in mid to low Maegashira. I just don't know how many times we're going to see him at Komusubi ever again. I'm worried about Maegashira 12, Sadano Umi, another 4-11. Pretty sure this is going to knock him down to Juryo, but he's been one of those guys who I've sort of been like checking in on. I'm like, well, he's 37 and he's still a speed guy. He's still making it work. This was a tournament where it looks like he was not making it work. He looked slow, and even when he was making good hits, it didn't seem like he was transferring a lot of power. I'm a little worried that we may not see Sadano Umi and Makuuchi again. And Juryo 10, Onosho. Whew. This guy was up in the Joy earlier this year, and now he is falling out of Juryo into Makushita. He ended up with a 2, 11, and 12, and while a 21-12 may be amazing for those of us who are Rush fans, it's not good for Onosho's future. I'm just afraid the time and the injuries have caught up to him. And then, yeah, the fact that him and Takakeisho were like junior high rivals and like sort of hitting the down slope at the same time feels a little apropos. But yeah, I am not very optimistic about Onosho's future in sumo. Now let's see who's taken that midnight train to Juryo. So this Makauchi Juryo exchange was a little more active than I expected, but it wasn't as crazy as some of the ones we've had earlier in the year. Right now it looks like we have 6 demotable records and 5 promotable records, so let's see how they're going to square that circle. Now first in line for demotion looks to be Maegashira 17 West Bushozan, right there at the bottom of the Banzuke. He ended up with 3 wins, that's a demotion. Maegashira 16 Shishi 5 and 10, that is a demotable record. Maegashira 17 and everyone's favorite new jacked pixie, Asakoryu 6 and 9, demotable record. Maegashira 13 Ryuden 4 and 11, that's also demotable. And Maegashira 12, as I just mentioned, Sadano Umi with a 4 and 11, and mathematically that looks demotable to me. Maegashira 15 Toki Hayate with 6 wins. That one's gonna be close, but mathematically that puts him down at Juryo 1 for me. And then the next one that would be in line would be Maegashira 14 Nishiki Fuji, but I think a 6 and 9 will keep him safe at Maegashira 14. And when it comes to our promotables, it looks like the Juryo Banzuke is very top-heavy, with both of our Juryo 1s and Juryo 2s being eligible for promotion. So first up would be Juryo 1 Kinbozan, who ended up winning the whole Juryo Yusho with a 12 and 3. He's up. Next, the other Juryo 1, Kitanowaka, 9 and 6, so promotable. Then, Juryo 2 Hakuwoho, he will be back in January with a 10 and 5, leaping up to the Maegashira ranks. And of course, Juryo 2 Kageyaki, former Makauchi mainstay, will be coming back up with 9 wins. Slightly lower on the Banzuke, I see Juryo 4, Tama Shoho with a 10 and 5. That should get him up just to the lowest part of Maegashira. Now, if we are looking for someone to take that Toki Hayate slot, Shiden at Juryo 6 with a 10 and 5. That's a borderline record, but I think it would be an over-promotion to put him up to Maegashira. And that also goes for Juryo 7, Tsurugishu, who also got a 10 and 5. If they're not going to promote Shiden with a 10 and 5, they're not going to promote the guy a full rank below him with the same record. So, ever since Hakuho retired, we've been talking about the new paradigm, the new Banzuke, what is going to happen to sumo once we finally get beyond the shadow of this Yokozuna who has completely changed what we consider sumo to be. I think we're there. If we look at the generation of wrestlers that still remembers facing Hakuho every tournament, we can see they're not at the top of the Banzuke anymore. In fact, they have all sort of lowered themselves down to somewhere between like Maegashira 7 and Maegashira 13. In the 14 wrestlers between 7 and 13, we have 11 wrestlers who got 7 or 8 wins. That tells me those guys are right at the Maegashira level they need to be at. Their true talent level seems to be right now sort of a middle boss level for any young hotness that wants to get through to the truly elite wrestlers. Check it out down there. You'll see a lot of old guard down there. Guys like Endo, guys like Mitake Yumi, Tamawashi, Takayasu. So, we are at the point in sumo where our 3 Ozeki have never faced Hakuho. Yeah. I think we are at the point where we have finally passed through the shadow of Hakuho, and we are ready for the top rankers of sumo to start declaring their dominance, their alpha doggedness on their own terms. Now, I've said before on this channel, the most beautiful thing in any sport is a truly great rivalry, and I think we might be setting ourselves up in 2025 for an amazing clash at the top of the Banzuke. I mean, rivalries are fun in any context, but when they're the people at the absolute best of the sport, it takes it to a whole nother level. So that's the real question. Is 2025 going to be just a coronation for one Ozeki who manages to separate themselves out from the pack? Sort of like I think we all thought Onosato was going to do right up until this tournament. Or are we setting ourselves up in 2025 and beyond for an amazing sumo rivalry between 2 wrestlers, heck, even 3 or 4 sumo wrestlers? Takerufuji Hakuwoho, let's talk about it. All at the top of the Banzuke, all fighting for the rope, all fighting for their place in sumo history. Now that is a 2025 I cannot wait to watch. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Dohyo. If you have not already, please like and subscribe. That just tells the YouTube algorithm that you like the Dohyo and more people should see it, right? And please stay tuned to the channel. We are about to launch all of our end-of-year 2024 Sumo episodes. We're going to be doing an updated charts of my tiers, who will be our next Ozeki, who will be our next Yokozuna, and of course, our 2024 Whose Year Was It year in review. And you're not going to want to miss that. So on this Thanksgiving, everyone stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo. Gonna show you the shirt one more time.